The homeless man sleeping outside the cafe had only one person who cared enough to speak to him. Her name was Emily. She gave him her last meal, defended him when strangers mocked him, and never asked for anything in return. But Emily didn't know one thing. The man she thought had nothing owned 3 hotels, a private jet, and a billion-dollar company. And he wasn't homeless. He was hiding. At 7:15 every morning, Emily Carter unlocked the back door of a small cafe on Madison Street. She was 28 years old, worked 6 days a week, and lived in a tiny apartment above an old bookstore. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. And she certainly wasn't looking for love. Emily was simply trying to survive. Her mother had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving behind a mountain of medical bills. Since then, Emily had learned one important lesson. Sometimes, people who have the least are the ones who give the most. Every morning, on her way to work, Emily passed the same man sitting near the subway entrance. He looked to be in his early 30s. His clothes were old. His shoes were worn. His dark hair was messy, and he carried a faded backpack that looked like it had been through years of rain. Most people walked past him without looking. Some didn't even notice he existed. But Emily noticed. His name, she would later learn, was Daniel. At first, she simply smiled at him. Then one cold morning, she stopped. "You look freezing." The man looked up. "I'm fine." Emily glanced at the thin jacket he was wearing. "No, you're not." She opened her cafe bag and pulled out a warm sandwich. "Here." Daniel stared at it. "You should keep that." "I have another one." It was a lie. She didn't. That sandwich had been her breakfast. Daniel slowly accepted it. "Thank you." Emily smiled. "You're welcome." Then she walked away. Daniel watched her disappear through the cafe doors. For the first time in months, he felt something he hadn't expected. Embarrassment. Not because Emily had helped him, but because he knew exactly how much that sandwich had cost her. Daniel wasn't homeless. His real name was Daniel Reed. He was the 34-year-old founder and CEO of Reedstone Holdings, a company valued at more than $1.2 billion. He owned luxury hotels across 3 states. He had a penthouse overlooking Manhattan. He had security guards, assistants, drivers, and people who answered his calls within seconds. But none of those things had helped him answer one question. Could anyone love Daniel Reed without knowing he was rich? For years, women had approached him because of his money. Some wanted his lifestyle. Others wanted his connections. Some didn't even pretend. His last relationship had ended when he discovered that his fiancée had secretly been transferring money from one of his private accounts. After that betrayal, Daniel became convinced that nobody could genuinely care about him. So he made a decision. He would disappear. For 3 months, Daniel handed control of his company to his trusted chief operating officer, Marcus. He rented a tiny storage room under a fake name. He dressed like a homeless man. He carried no credit cards. No expensive watch. No phone. No identification. Only a backpack. And he waited. He wanted to see how people treated a man they believed had nothing. That's when he met Emily. Days passed. Emily continued bringing him food whenever she could. Sometimes it was soup. Sometimes a sandwich. Once, she gave him her umbrella during a thunderstorm. Daniel refused. "You'll get wet." "I work inside," she replied. "And you?" "I've survived worse." She smiled and walked away. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about those words. One afternoon, he asked her, "Why do you help strangers?" Emily shrugged. "Because someone once helped my mother when she needed it." "Who?" "I don't know." Daniel looked confused. "She was sick. We couldn't afford medicine. A stranger paid the pharmacy bill." Emily smiled softly. I never found out who he was. Daniel looked away. For some reason, her answer stayed with him. One Friday evening, something happened that changed everything. A violent storm hit the city. People rushed into stores and restaurants. But Daniel remained outside. He had nowhere to go. Emily finished her shift at 10:30 p.m. When she stepped outside, she saw Daniel sitting beneath the cafe's narrow awning. She stopped. "You're still here?" He nodded. "Where else would I go?" Emily looked at the rain. Then she looked at him. "Come with me." Daniel stood. "Where?" "My apartment." He immediately shook his head. "No." "Why?" "I don't want to cause trouble." "You won't." "Emily." "Daniel, it's freezing." She grabbed her umbrella. "You can sleep on my couch." Daniel stared at her. "You barely know me." Emily smiled. "Exactly. What does that mean?" "It means I don't need to know your whole life story to know you're cold." Daniel couldn't answer. That night, for the first time in years, a billionaire slept on an old couch in a tiny apartment. There was no marble floor. No expensive furniture. No security. Just a small room, a blanket, and the sound of rain against the window. Daniel looked around. On the wall was a photograph of Emily's mother. Beside it was a handwritten note. "Kindness costs nothing, but it can change someone's entire life." Daniel stared at those words for a long time. The next morning, Emily made breakfast. 2 eggs. 2 slices of toast. And 1 cup of coffee. Daniel smiled. "You don't have much." Emily laughed. "Neither do you." For the first time, Daniel laughed too. And something inside him changed. He stopped thinking about Emily as part of an experiment. He started thinking about her as someone he genuinely wanted to know. They spent the next few weeks together. Emily introduced him to her favorite park. They ate cheap pizza. They watched old movies. Daniel helped repair a broken shelf in her apartment. Emily teased him because he had no idea how to use a screwdriver. "You really are useless." Daniel laughed. "I've been told that before." "You need practice." Neither of them knew how deeply they were falling for each other. But there was one problem. Daniel's secret was becoming harder to hide. One morning, Emily noticed something strange. Daniel was standing outside the cafe when a black luxury car stopped across the street. A man in an expensive suit stepped out. He looked around. Then his eyes landed on Daniel. Daniel immediately turned away. The man walked toward him. "Mr. Reed." Daniel raised a finger. "Not here." Emily watched from inside the cafe. "Mr. Reed?" She became suspicious. Later that evening, she asked Daniel. "Who was that man?" "Nobody." "He called you Mr. Reed." Daniel hesitated. "It's complicated." Emily looked into his eyes. "Are you in trouble?" "No." "Are you hiding something from me?" Daniel didn't answer. Emily looked hurt. "I thought we were friends." "We are." "Then tell me the truth." Daniel wanted to. But fear stopped him. What if she looked at him differently? What if the moment she discovered he was rich, everything between them disappeared? So he said the worst possible thing. "I don't have anything to tell you." Emily nodded slowly. "Okay." She walked away. 3 days later, Emily was invited to a luxury hotel. She had no idea why. A receptionist told her someone wanted to meet her. When the elevator doors opened, Emily stepped into a massive penthouse. The walls were covered with expensive artwork. A giant window overlooked the city. Then she saw a photograph. Daniel. But he wasn't wearing old clothes. He was wearing a black designer suit. Standing beside him were several executives. Under the photograph was a name. Daniel Reed, founder and CEO, Reedstone Holdings. Emily froze. Her heart started beating faster. No. She picked up a magazine from the table. There he was again. The same face. The same eyes. The same man she had met outside the subway. The billionaire. The CEO. The man whose company appeared on television almost every week. Daniel walked into the room. He stopped when he saw her. Emily turned around. You lied to me. Daniel's face fell. Emily. You're Daniel Reed. Yes. You're a billionaire. He nodded. How long were you planning to keep this from me? I didn't know how to tell you. You could have started with the truth. I was afraid. Emily stared at him. Afraid of what? That you'd change. Emily laughed bitterly. You mean you'd finally find out what I wanted? Daniel stepped closer. I didn't do this to manipulate you. Then why? Because I wanted to know if someone could care about me without knowing what I owned. Emily's eyes filled with tears. And did you find your answer? Daniel looked at her. Yes. She waited. You. But Emily wasn't ready to forgive him. She turned toward the door. Daniel stopped her. Please. She looked back. You should have trusted me. I know. You weren't testing the world, Daniel. She wiped a tear from her cheek. You were testing me. Daniel had no answer. Because she was right. The following week, Daniel returned to the subway entrance. This time he wasn't wearing old clothes. He wore a simple black suit. He sat on the same bench where he had once pretended to be homeless. A young man approached him. Sir? Daniel looked up. The man was holding a small bag of food. I saw you sitting here last week. Daniel smiled. You don't have to give me that. I know. The man handed it to him anyway. Someone gave me food when I had nothing. Daniel looked at the bag. Why are you helping me? The man smiled. Because someone helped me. Daniel lowered his head. Emily's words came back to him. Kindness really did travel. That evening, Daniel went to Emily's apartment. She opened the door. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Daniel handed her a small envelope. Emily looked confused. What is this? Open it. Inside was a photograph. It showed Emily's mother standing outside a pharmacy years earlier. Emily's eyes widened. Where did you get this? Daniel took a breath. My father had a foundation that helped families with medical emergencies. Emily stared at him. Wait. Daniel nodded. Your mother's pharmacy bill. Emily covered her mouth. You. My father's foundation paid it. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You knew? I didn't know it was your mother until recently. Emily looked at the photograph again. So the person who helped my mother. Daniel nodded. It was my family. Emily was silent. Then she whispered. You saved her. No. Daniel shook his head. Someone in my family helped her. But you. He looked directly into her eyes. You saved me. Emily finally smiled through her tears. You're still an idiot. Daniel laughed. I know. And you're still terrible with screwdrivers. I've improved. No, you haven't. They both laughed. Months later, Daniel made a surprising announcement. He created a new foundation. Its mission was simple. To provide food, temporary housing, and emergency medical assistance to people who had nowhere else to turn. But there was one rule. Daniel refused to put his name on it. When reporters asked why, he said, because kindness shouldn't be advertising. Emily eventually joined the foundation. Not because she wanted Daniel's money. but because she understood what it felt like to need help. And Daniel finally understood something too. True love wasn't about finding someone who loved the billionaire. It was about finding someone who would have cared about the man even if the billions never existed. 1 year after they met, Daniel returned to the cafe where Emily had first given him a sandwich. He placed a small box on the counter. Emily opened it. Inside was a simple ring. No diamonds the size of stones. No cameras. No reporters. Just Daniel standing in front of her. I spent my whole life wondering if someone could love me without my money. Emily smiled. And? Daniel took her hand. I finally stopped looking for someone who loved my life. He paused. And found someone who loved me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Yes. Daniel smiled. Was that a yes? She laughed. Yes, you billionaire idiot. And for the first time, Daniel didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like the luckiest man alive. Because he had finally discovered something money could never buy. A person who saw him before she ever saw his fortune. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss our next emotional story. And don't forget to tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?